Hello, this is a lesson on writing null and alternate hypotheses. So I've talked a little bit about null and alternate hypotheses. The null hypothesis, abbreviated H subscript 0. The format is always something equals something. Um, in other words, there's no difference. Things are the same. Status quo. That's ways to think about the null hypothesis. Now, for chapter 15 in particular, we're always interested in the population mean, and so for all the chapter 15 questions, the null hypothesis will take the form mu equals some number, whatever that number happens to be. And I'll do an example in a couple minutes. All right, now the alternate hypothesis, abbreviated HA, this is a difference of some kind. And so the basic format of the alternate is something is greater than something, or maybe something is less than something, or something is not equal to something. Now, in particular with chapter 15, we're interested in mu, so it would be mu is greater than something, or mu is less than something, or mu is not equal to something. So think of the alternate as there's a difference of some kind. Maybe the income levels have increased, or the cholesterol levels of the experimental group has decreased, or things like that. And that's why we have the not equal to or the greater than less than, because there's a difference between two things. Now, I want to mention one-tailed and two-tailed tests here. If you have this situation, mu is not equal to something, that is called a two-tailed test. Or some textbooks refer to this as a two-sided test. And the reason is because mu could be greater or it could be less. So there's two ways that this statement could be true. On the other hand, so let's draw a little arrow to our two-tailed test. On the other hand, these two, mu strictly less or strictly greater, those are called one-tailed tests. For the obvious reason that there's only one side. For mu greater than something, it's only if mu is greater that this would be true. And same thing with less. So one-tailed test, or also known as a one-sided test. So it's just important to keep that in mind for future reference. Now, this is step one in the hypothesis testing, is to write your hypotheses. And once you get your hypotheses, it's important to keep in mind what we're doing with these hypotheses. So with the null hypothesis, this is what you're trying to disprove. You're looking for evidence to try to disprove the null. Now, technically, you're not disproving it because you never know for sure. There's not absolute proof based on just a sample, but we're looking for evidence to we're looking for evidence against the null hypothesis. Looking for evidence against. Okay, now you're not think of it like you're not really trying to prove anything. You're trying to disprove the null. Now, if you end up disproving the null, then that implies then that the alternate is true. But think of it as we're just testing the null. All right, now let's do an example here. I'd like to do question number 6, page 373. Here it is. 15.6, women's incomes. It says, the average income for American women who work full-time and have only a high school degree is $31,666. So that's an assumed population mean there, the population being all American women who work full-time and have only high school degrees. All right, you wonder whether the mean income of female graduates from your local high school who work full-time but have only high school degree is different than the national average. You obtain information from a simple random sample of 62 female graduates who work full-time and have only high school degree and find that X bar equals 30,052. What are your null and alternate hypotheses? All right, let's go to let's get a new page here. So this is chapter 15, question number 6. So the null hypothesis is always something equals something. In this case, it's mu equals what the national average is, which is $31,666. That would be US dollars. All right. Uh, and that would be the statement that there's no difference, that the people from your high school is the same as the people in the national average as far as income goes. All right, the alternate is something is not equal to something or greater or less. Now, to write that alternate, you have to pay special attention to the wording of the question. So let's go back to the question here. It says here, you wonder whether the mean income of female graduates from your local high school who work full-time but have only a high school degree is different. So that's the key word there. You want to know if it's different. You don't want to know if it's higher or lower. You just want to know if there's a difference. So that would mean the alternate is mu is not equal to 31,666,000 US dollars. Okay, and that's it for that example. Now let me talk a little bit more about some keywords here on how to write that alternate. The null is easy. It's just mu is equal to and whatever the number is that you're comparing it to. It's the alternate that's sometimes a little bit tricky. So anytime the question is if it's asking if there's some sort of increase or somehow something is more or greater. If you see those sort of words in your question, then your alternate is going to be mu is greater than something. So if the question is something like blah, 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 is there evidence that something increased? It would be mu greater than something. Or blah, 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 is there evidence that that something is more than something? Then mu is greater. That's your alternate. All right. On the other hand, if you see words like decrease, or less or something like that, that implies the alternate will be mu is less than something. And that's about it for writing hypotheses.